I want to welcome our guest this week, the Vice President of CS Customer Success at SafeGraph, Ryan Weisert. Ryan, thanks so much for being on our episode of Unchurned. Really appreciate it.
Josh, thank you very, very much for having me.
So we're going to get into a bunch of topics today. You and I were talking earlier, and I think you've got some really, really interesting ways that you've been able to develop talent and help to build your customer success teams. I want to start out, Unchurned, our podcast, is all about building relationships. I believe fervently that CS is really all about building relationships. And I like to ask all the guests on our show to think about a relationship and describe to us that you've really cherished outside of a family member relationship or a domestic partner. Can you tell us about a relationship that you've really cherished?
Absolutely. So a friend of mine, we'll call him Brian. I don't know if he wants me to use his full name. He and I have been friends for about almost 20 years now. And we were introduced, our dads used to work together, but we didn't know each other as kids. He came to my college, the University of California at Santa Barbara. So he was a freshman when I was a junior or a senior. And I get a phone call from my dad one day and said, "Hey, show this guy around." And I met him for a Jamba Juice, and he seemed like a halfway decent kid. So I invited him to the house for a party. He wiped the floor with my entire house playing beer pong. And I was like, okay, this kid's really got something. So we started calling him the rookie. And he's been one of my best friends ever since. But the reason why I cherish the relationship is we're both very entrepreneurial people. So when we catch up, whether it's over Zoom or over drinks or whatever it is, we do the pleasantries. Hey, how's the wife? How's the girlfriend? How's the dog? How's work? All of those sorts of things. We both have, careers that we're excited about. But inevitably, it's really just a countdown to we start brainstorming business ideas. Some of them are great. Some of them are not so great. But that's one of the things that I really love is just somebody who operates at that same wavelength, who brings energy and ideas kind of to the table. Is somebody that I very much cherish that relationship for that reason.
I want to double click into that for a moment. So it sounds like you guys have this improvisation. It just comes naturally to you. What is it about your personas, about that dynamic between the two of you that allows you to have that rhythm?
I come at things from almost like more of a people-centric mindset. Like, what would somebody want? What would make somebody's life easier? What would get somebody excited? And he comes at things from a finance and numbers and margin background. And so I think we've known each other for so long, like we can speak in shorthand and we understand what the other person likes and doesn't like and those sorts of things. But coming at it from two different perspectives, but arriving at the same sort of mutual goal of, hey, let's get excited about this. How can we shape this up? I think that's really what's allowed us to sort of thrive from that standpoint.
I think they call it, I'm blanking on the name, but there's a term for intersectional, well, I'm blanking on it, but when you come from things from different angles, but the diversity of that adds and builds upon it.
We are symbiotic in that way, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's take that paradigm of a relationship that you have with quote unquote Brian, and talk about your relationships in the business world. In your role leading customer success, there's several relationships that are dear to you. There's the relationship probably laterally and upward with other departments and with company leadership. There's the relationship, of course, with the team that you're working with, your team in customer success. And then goes without saying, there's building the relationship with the customer. Let's pick one and dive into it of really what you think makes for the most effective building of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would imagine that a lot of people come in and talk about customers. The importance of the relationship to customers is very critical. The one that I actually enjoy the most is the horizontal relationship with the leaders of other teams. For me, the closest, every place that I've been and been successful, the closest relationship that I had in the company was horizontally with another team leader, specifically the head of product, right? So being hyper aligned with the head of product, I think, is really, really critical. As VP of customer success, I look at it as my job to take the company vision, right, that's coming down from the executive team or coming down from the CEO, and translate that into a set of priorities for my team so that they're able to exercise really good judgment, make decisions independently, and really do things with our customers or just do the kind of work that allow us to progress forward in terms of where we're going as a company. To me, it's hyper in SaaS or data as a service or any of these business models. Your company vision is really your product vision as well. And so to me, it's really hypercritical that how I'm guiding my team and how I want them thinking, where I want them driving customers to, it's hyper aligned with where our product team wants our customers to go, right? Where do they want to generate demand for new products? Where do they want to increase adoption on existing products? So if we can be hyper aligned, then we can be very, very successful, because then all it really takes is they build, we sell and renew, and everybody makes money and everybody is successful. If you're misaligned there, then we're pitching things that they're not going to build, right? Or that they're not supporting. They're developing products that we're not generating demand for. Everybody gets frustrated, and then the company does not succeed. So to me, that's the relationship that I like to really develop the most.
I've already said this word, but it's a sacred relationship, right? Like that relationship. I think you're referring a lot to the relationship between customer success and product management, product groups. I was a product owner for about 15 years, so I certainly have worn both hats and understand that fully, and 100% agree. Let's talk a little bit tactically. What do you do to forge that relationship at all levels? Leadership to leadership of the teams, and then IC, individual contributor to individual contributor.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you got to hang out. You got to be around, right? Product people aren't necessarily on customer calls or internal calls all day. They are spending time in deep work mode, thinking up stuff, coming up with ideas, right? So first thing you do is you're just hanging around. Back in the world where we were all in the office, the product office was just the office that I hung out in, right? The reason being is I want to be their sounding board, right? I want to either myself, my team, or maybe even a select group of customers to be who they go to first. They've had an inspiration. They've shaped it up. I'll take a quarter-baked idea, right? And if it's going to go in front of a customer, maybe I want it to be half-baked. But I want to create an atmosphere where customer success and our customers, by extension, can be their sounding board, where they can sort of pressure test ideas to see if they're worth pursuing. So from a sort of leadership standpoint, I'm coming to them and I'm being accountable. CS will be your sounding board. We will give you instant feedback. You will not have to wait on us. If you want customers, we will go get those for you. By bringing that level of accountability to the relationship, you get things from them that you might not otherwise get. From an IC to IC thing, whoever's leading a particular proof of concept or is running with an idea on the product side, making sure that the customers they want to talk to and the CSMs that manage those, everybody's on the same page. This is something we're going to prioritize. This is space within an existing meeting and that new meeting that we're going to create. That's really how you make that work. And then upwards, the critical thing is, one of the things I look at in a company, like if I'm thinking about joining a company or I'm advising a company, is who builds the business case for new products. Some companies, it's all product. They want unfiltered feedback from customers and prospects and competition. They're shaping up the business case themselves and they're running with it. Other places, it's, hey, go-to-market teams build the revenue case, right, exclusively, and then that's how we'll prioritize. In a perfect world, it's both, right? It's that symbiotic relationship that we talked about that allows the revenue teams, customer success being one of them, and the product team to sort of co-build these things together and then take that to leadership to say, hey, this is what we should spend our time, money, and resources on. These are what we need to market, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how I try to stay aligned at the upper leadership level, at my level, and then at the IC level as well.
What you're saying sounds truly collaborative. It's one of those things I kind of feel like I need to see it to believe it. that you're able to get that the head of product and leadership to really kind of buy into that. But I think I think from listening to you, one of the approaches you're taking is one that's cited by Adam Grant, and I think his book is called Give or Take, or Give and Take, where it's all about you have to give first. Build that trust, and then you earn the right to have more of a voice and to make the asks. And it sounds to me like what you're doing is a little bit of servant leadership, where you're going and you're offering yourself up and your team up, saying, hey, how can we help you? We're at the front lines with the customer. Let us serve as your customer marketing group in some sense, right? Customer advocacy. Let us help you build that out and get for you the feedback.
Yep.
And then now you've got yourself inside of the concentric circles of making product decisions. It sounds to me like that's a little bit of what you're applying.
100%. I mean, product teams need two things, right? They need access to customers. Two things from CS: they need access to customers, and they need revenue, right? And revenue and adoption. And I look at those as kind of two sides of the same coin. And so all I have to do as a customer success leader is make my team and the resources available to me available to them, right? That's easy enough to do. I'm a firm believer that in tech, you will only go as far as your product will take you, right? So I have a very vested interest, both from a team success standpoint and company success standpoint, in the product being great. So making those resources available makes sense 10 times out of 10. But the other piece, and this is the harder piece, be accountable for the revenue. If you build this, I will bring you this number of dollars, or I'll bring you this number of customers, or whatever it is, right? And by bringing that level of accountability, you give them the confidence, right? You overcome the fear that they might build something that nobody buys, because if you don't sell it, it's on me, right? If it doesn't sell, it's on me. It's not on them. Do
you present that those arguments? Do you actually present to them the numbers and the projections of implications of certain features that you're advocating for?
100%, right? Because if we don't, I've always led teams where we were responsible for upsell. In order to upsell, we need new product in order to build, right? It's an easier thing for me to be accountable for, because I'm telling them, hey, I'm going to come deliver the revenue. You need to build this thing. Because if we don't deliver that revenue, I'm fired anyways, right? Because I haven't achieved the broader goal in my role as VP of CS. So I can be out on a limb with them saying, hey, this is what we need to do here on the cutting edge, because we need the cutting edge. We need the new product in order to deliver the kind of outcomes and the kind of growth that companies in this space aspire to.
There's a vibe that I'm getting from you, Ryan, which is that a word to describe the way you work is ownership, that you take a lot of ownership. And the proactivity and ownership of building the relationship and making yourself a servant to the other horizontal functions for the greater good. The ownership of presenting your ideas to them once you've built that trust, but sharing with them the why and the implications and maybe even some of the quant behind it. I really like that. And then, of course, as a team leader, you want that ownership to transmit to the folks that work on your team as well, right? So if we're going to go 360 with Ryan Weisert, we've already gone to the left, right, and kind of up to, and now let's go, I hate the word, but now let's go downward a little bit, right? And let's talk about building the relationships with the folks that are on your team. Yep. What's the magic there?
For me, I spend more time and effort on personnel development than most people in my experience. There are kind of three. I look at it as you've said the servant mentality. I think that's high praise, right? I think that's what I aspire to. I don't think I get there every day. But in reality, I look at it as these people are choosing to spend their, to share their career with me. I want to be as good a steward of that trust as I possibly can. So for me, what I focus on getting three things in alignment, right? So what they're good at, what the company needs, and what motivates them, right? If I can get all three of those things in alignment at any one point, I have the right person in the right role, which is something to be very proud of. But if you're going to be serious about personnel development, you have to understand that two of those things are going to evolve no matter what, right? What the company needs and what motivates them will evolve over time, right? In my position, sort of leading CS, I should have as good a view as I need to understand how what the company needs is going to evolve. What the direct report or whoever it is brings to the table is an understanding and complete transparency of how what motivates them might evolve over time. When you assume that those two things will change, you can then create a development path. Hey, here's what we're going to add that will develop your skill set so that you can meet the demand of what the company needs. You can be good at more things, different things. You can be better at things, so that knowing that what motivates you over time, knowing that you're going to aspire to different things in your career, we can actually have you on a career path where each step along the way, we have those three things in alignment. That's how you create a career path for somebody.
Are you, I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, because I think it's really insightful. Are you saying that there's a formula to a career path, which in some ways, which is it's what motivates that person plus what the company needs, which, like you said, those are both dynamic and evolving, equals what they're good at or what skills you want to develop in them? Am I hearing that correctly, or how?
It's 100% correct. It's a really succinct way to say that.
Got it. And so it sounds like you have to have a lot of that improv communication skills that you had, or dynamic that you talked about with your friend Brian, right? Quote unquote. And where there's open honesty, trust, they're bringing to the table what motivates them, which frankly can be a very personal thing, right?
Yep.
And you're bringing to the table the evolution of the company, what they need, which also can be fairly confidential and requires a lot of trust. So
Sure.
How do you build that foundation of trust so that you can have this conversation in a really effective way with your reports?
Totally. So you hit the nail on the head that all I really need from a direct report to be successful, in order for me to actually have a positive impact on their career, I just need them to be honest with me and trust me, right? I need them to be good at their jobs and those sorts of things. But like, in order for them to get value out of me as their manager, I just need them to be honest with me and trust me. That's a relatively easy thing to bring to the table, but people will only do that, will only sort of expose themselves in some way if there's a clear give gets, if there's a clear upside for them. In order to do that upside, in order to present that upside, it's not really rocket science, right? Make it really clear to them that you're invested in getting them in their like actual success, right? And they're not only their professional success, but their personal success as well, right? You're not trying to work them to death, right? You want them to sort of achieve all the things that they want in life, right? By making it really clear, I am going to help you get from point A to point B, and I will also, as the definition of point B or point C or whatever evolves, I'm here for that. I'm not closing any doors. I'm not putting you to a decision and then making it so you can never go back on that decision. You make this a collaborative. How do we get you to where you want to go, kind of thing? It allows, if I can establish that, then it allows me to be really honest with them. Here's what you're good at. Here's what you're not so good at. Here's the experiences and the skills that we're going to add so that you can get to where you want to go on this step and the step after that.
What is your initial intake with a new hire look like? Does this all happen on day one? Does this happen as a handover from the recruiting team? Is this something that's built over the first few months? What does it actually look like for you?
So I've inherited different teams over time. So I'll give you kind of two answers. I just inherited somebody, and I hired somebody. So when I inherit somebody, it actually does happen on day one. Or day one with them. So the first one-on-one is like the times I've stepped into a new job, I make it really clear to people that are hiring me that like, I'm doing people first, then tech, and then customers, right? Mm-hmm. We could spend a ton of time on that if we wanted to. But the reason why people first is so important is that if you're going to be somebody's manager, you can't be their manager if you're prioritizing your understanding of the technology, your understanding of the business first, right? I make it really clear. All I really care about today on day one is you, right? I want to understand you. And so that first one-on-one is a long time. I'm giving them much the same talk that I am right now. They're not going to tell me everything I need to know in order to get the most out of them on day one, but we're at least establishing that foundation that I want to know these things. I want unabated honesty. I'm always available to them, and we are going to get them together to where they want to be. So that's when you inherit somebody. This conversation that we're having right now, I have with people that I'm hiring. So I'm trying to keep three things in alignment at all times. They get that whole thing so that they're coming in knowing that's the kind of manager that they're going to have, and they're there. Like, I'm getting some of that because I want to understand what motivates a candidate and those sorts of things, where they want to go in their career. I wouldn't hire somebody without that knowledge. So then we can just continue that conversation as they come in and start to get ramped up on the job.
What are you looking for in candidates to come join your teams in customer success?
So there's a bunch of things, right? And I've listened to this podcast and seen the videos before. The one that I really loved, I'm forgetting the person's name, but he talked about intellectual curiosity, and I literally clapped my hands out loud, right? I need intellectual curiosity. I need somebody who is mentally smart, mentally agile, who can have 20 conversations about 20 things in 20 minutes, right? Though all of those are the things that you need in order to do CS. What I've learned about me specifically that I value probably more than anything else is judgment. I have neither the time nor the inclination to micromanage anyone, right? Yes, there are always so many demands on customer success teams' time that everybody's going to be spread a little bit thin, right? And so optimizing for this is something I have to thank my current company, SafeGraph, and our founder, Oren Hoffman. Like, this is one of our values, right? We want people with great judgment, and it's something that's really resonated with me. So it's a conversation we have with candidates right off the bat, right? We talk to them about our values, and we say, hey, we want you to be able to make independent judgment calls and feel very confident in that. Know that you're not going to lose your job if you make the wrong call, but we really want people who have good judgment and are committed to making their judgment better. So one of the questions that I ask in interview cycles, which always throws people for a loop, but I always get really honest answers, is I give them the spiel about, hey, we value judgment. Then I ask them, what's the last judgment call that you got wrong? And can you walk me through it, right? And inevitably, there's about a 5-second pause, right? As they're thinking about it and they're trying to wrap their heads around it. You give them the space to answer, hey, you can tell me at work or you can tell me outside of work. Either one is fine. But what it gives you is when they answer that question, it shows you how serious they're taking the question, how willing to be vulnerable they are, right? When people, like, the best answers are the ones where it's like, yep, I made a major mistake at work, right? That's a really scary thing to say in an interview, but that's exactly the kind of person that I want, because you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to be perfect. I make bad calls all the time, right? Just ask my team or my wife. But the key is fix it, learn from it, and then make a better call the next time. And that's how you grow. That's how you grow in my trust of you, but it's also how you grow in it's very much how you grow in your career.
Well, it's growth mindset, right? If I had a penny for every time I've invoked that, or a guest has invoked that on this podcast, if there's one book to read ever, it's growth mindset. But I also like your reference to judgment. That's something that I haven't heard before. That I'm sure that is a grown skill, but there's also a little bit of an innate aspect to that as well, of an innate aspect. Yeah. And I think you've articulated that really, and I've never really put my finger on that, but I really like the way that you described that.
For sure.
What percentage of your time in your day as a vice president of customer success do you spend on people?
At least 25%, because typically I'm at least 2 one-on-ones per day. So I would say I spend about a third of my time on people, whether it's managing relationships with people that work for me, or because I also look at, like, I've got one-on-ones with a ton of different people we're a remote company, right? So I don't just bump into people, get lunch or whatever it is. So I over-index on just kind of cross-functional one-on-ones. But I'm looking at those not just as catch-ups, not just as like tactical, hey, are we doing this, and this, but also a chance to build that relationship as well. So I'd say probably about a third. Yeah,
you're that funnel and nexus of communication. That's all the one-on-ones. Exactly. So I want to crank the brakes here for a second, throw a U-turn and a little bit of a 180. I know you have an interesting perspective on customer segmentation. What's the right balance of getting to hyper personalization versus more broader strokes? Tell me and tell us a little bit about your philosophy in customer success around segmentation.
For sure. I look at customer segmentation as kind of the pole or the tension between two poles, right? One is CSM experience, and the other is customer experience, right? I find that in companies where growth is maximized over everything, they're maximizing for sort of company profitability and scalability. And you'll notice that I didn't mention either of those. I didn't mention that as either of the two poles, right? I feel like that gets in the way of, obviously you have to be realistic, right? You can't have one CSM for every customer and all of those sorts of things. But in reality, if you can optimize for your CSM's experience and optimize for your customer's experience, the outcome of that will be so profitable that the company is going to get what they need to out of it anyways. That's my philosophy. So where, to me, a lot of segmentation strategies fall flat is that they don't really look at the feasibility just on a day-to-day basis of how like a CSM manages their time. They also don't look at like the growth path or the relative enjoyability of the job. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a relatively high touch model, right? So your expectation is that your CSMs are going to have monthly meetings with your customers to introduce new features and drive adoption of those, to check in on kind of business processes, start to measure risk and opportunity and all these. It's pretty standard cadence, right? If you're giving them 40 customers, right? What that amounts to is that they're doing two customer calls a day if there's 20 working days in the month. A very straightforward model, right? But you see a lot of companies where the expectation is, hey, lots and lots of engagement with our customers, but the CS team has 80 or 100, right? And that's where you fall short of that feasibility measure, because now you're asking them to do something that's fundamentally impossible. And when that happens, the CSM knows going into the day that they are going to fundamentally fail at what they're being asked to do. So now all of a sudden their standards across everything they do start to slip. They take on a survivor mentality and they take on a quantity over quality mentality, and they're just trying to survive and fight fires and all of these different things. That's not a fun job, right? That's a recipe for burnout. And if you really look at your customer success managers as a massive part of your customer experience, if that part of your customer experience is headed towards burnout, then your customers are also probably headed towards burnout as well. So that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is your customers don't care how you segment them, right? They don't care if you look at them as a mid-market or as an SMB or as a strategic or an enterprise, right? They want their needs met. They want the promise of whatever it is that they've invested in, be it data or services or software or whatever it is, to pay off, right? And so that's where I see like the best customer success jobs are the ones where the product is awesome, right? Where the product works and it's all kind of on time, right? So customer success gets a hell of a lot harder when you're making up for with consulting or extra support or guidance or whatever it is for shortcomings of the product. And that's where having a real look at what it is that your customers need from the human side of your business, which starts with CS, in order to maximize their value or to realize the intended value of their investment. That's the other piece of it. And so most people look at customer segmentation and they start with the balance sheet, right? They start with, here's the number of revenue, here's the percentage that we're allocating towards CS. Okay, here's how we'll balance that out. When instead they should look at the calendars and the day-to-day of their customer success managers and really get in deep with their customers to understand, okay, how much time do they actually need? Build the model from there. You maximize your CSM's experience and you maximize your customer's experience. You're going to be in a significantly better place as a company.
So it sounds like for you, proper segmentation is at this intersection of like what are our capabilities, but also I'm going to start over. So a little note to our producer here to cut this out. So it sounds like for you that segmentation is really about understanding what value needs to be delivered, right? It's almost in the product world. Again, I come from the product world. It's like minimum viable product. Now, I don't want to say that you're always looking for like the minimum threshold or whatever, right? As a product manager, I would argue that I have always in my career, right? What's the minimum iterative thing? But it's like, what's the minimum viable value to deliver to your customers that really truly satisfies them?
Yep.
And then you can build up that model of resources and people and all, et cetera, that you need from there and make sure that it all fits.
100%. And you have to be honest with yourself. What percentage of that value is coming from the humans and not the product? And that's where it requires a fairly humble company and it requires a fairly humble leadership team to adopt this kind of model to say, hey, this is where we're purveyors of technology, but here's where that technology is actually at in the real world, and here's what we're filling the gap. Here's where we're filling the gaps with humans.
Ryan, last question for you. On the note of technology, Update AI, of course, is a technology platform for customer success. There's others that are doing other things for the CS community to help lift it up. Technology or not, what excites you the most about the future of customer success?
what I have seen when I got into this field, there was really only one player in the game, and that was Gainsight. And Gainsight literally just defined this. I read the customer success book. I went to my very first Pulse, and it was this eye-opening experience, right? I thought customer success manager, that's kind of a weird niche title. And I went to Pulse, and I was surrounded by people who were living and breathing and paying for their mortgages with customer success, and it kind of opened my eyes. Gainsight going unicorn status, right, has really created this market where smaller companies can come in and solve individual problems in really scalable and cool ways, and can actually help as we evolve the practice of customer success. We can actually be right there on the leading edge from a technology perspective, enabling those things that are kind of cutting edge best practices, as opposed to always doing things the way that we've always done. So for me, I always pick up the phone, right? If you want to cold call me, I'm going to test you, right? I'm going to give you a question that's hard to answer. If you answer that question well, I'm going to give you 30 minutes of my time, because I have a really vested interest in seeing this space and the smaller burgeoning technologies in this space continue to grow, continue to thrive, because I think we've really just scratched the surface with what customer success can and should be. And what I really want to see is other industries taking what technology has done from a customer success standpoint and starting to adapt that, right? I'm never going to have a customer success manager from Spectrum Cable, right? But going that direction, more companies spending money, spending resources on their own customers' experience and making sure that's better, right? That's something I have a vested interest in seeing in the world, and I see technology as a way to usher that.
I mean, for the $150 a month that Spectrum Cable is charging each of its customers, why not have a customer success manager, right? Like, think about it for a second. This is something that is applicable. Ryan Weisert, Vice President of Customer Success at Safegraph, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, thank you. This was really fun. Josh, have a great rest of your day.